In the early 1950s, there was a motorcycle that could make a rider question what a road machine was actually supposed to be. It wasn't covered in complicated bodywork. It didn't need a huge number of cylinders. And it certainly didn't look like the kind of machine that should have been capable of shocking the world's fastest motorcycles. Yet the Vincent Black Shadow Series C had exactly that reputation. This was a motorcycle born from an unusual idea. Build a road machine with the performance of a racing motorcycle, then give an ordinary rider the chance to experience it. That sounds almost normal today. In 1952, it was extraordinary. The company behind it was Vincent, a small British manufacturer that never had the production scale of giants like BSA or Triumph. What Vincent lacked in size, however, it tried to make up for with engineering ambition. Its motorcycles were expensive, technically interesting, and built with an almost obsessive attention to performance. At the center of everything was the Vincent V-twin. The engine was a 998cc air-cooled V-twin. But calling it simply a big V-twin doesn't really explain what made it special. Vincent's engineers treated the engine, frame, suspension, and braking system as parts of one larger engineering problem. They weren't interested in following the standard recipe just because everyone else was doing it. That attitude was visible before the motorcycle even moved. Look at the frame, and you notice something strange. There isn't a conventional tubular frame surrounding the engine in the way you might expect from a motorcycle of the period. Instead, Vincent used the engine as a stressed structural component, with the upper frame built around the massive fuel tank and the engine contributing directly to the motorcycle's structure. That decision saved weight and created a very distinctive appearance. The machine looked almost unfinished to someone accustomed to conventional motorcycles, but Vincent wasn't designing for appearances. Every unusual decision had a reason. The Black Shadow evolved from the Vincent Rapid, but the Shadow was tuned for greater performance. Higher compression, larger carburetors, and other changes helped the engine produce more power. The result was a motorcycle that could reach speeds that seemed almost unbelievable for a production road bike in the early 1950s. Vincent claimed the Black Shadow could exceed 125 miles per hour. That number became legendary. At a time when many riders considered 100 miles per hour an enormous achievement, Vincent was selling a motorcycle that could potentially go significantly faster. And this wasn't a stripped-down racing special that ordinary customers could barely use. It was a road-legal motorcycle. That was the remarkable part. You could walk into a dealer, buy a Black Shadow, and own something that came frighteningly close to the performance of dedicated racing machinery. But the story gets even more interesting when you understand where the Black Shadow came from. Vincent's engineering story was heavily influenced by one man, Philip Vincent. He wasn't interested in building motorcycles that merely followed established formulas. He wanted to create machines that solved problems differently. That philosophy eventually brought engineer Phil Irving into the picture. Irving became one of the most important technical figures in Vincent's history, and his work on the V-twin helped transform the company's motorcycles into something genuinely exceptional. The Vincent V-twin began life with the Rapid, but it didn't remain static. Engineers continued developing the engine, increasing performance while trying to maintain the durability required for road use. By the time the Black Shadow arrived, the engine had become one of the most impressive power plants in British motorcycling. Its 47-degree V-twin configuration gave the motorcycle a personality all its own. There was a deep, heavy pulse from the engine, but the motorcycle was capable of revving with surprising enthusiasm for such a large twin. Open the throttle and the experience wasn't gentle. The Black Shadow didn't explode forward like a modern superbike. Instead, it delivered a massive wave of torque that seemed to pull the motorcycle forward with increasing force. That torque was one of its greatest weapons. You didn't need to constantly chase the top of the rev range. The engine had enough strength throughout its operating range to make acceleration feel effortless. And this was exactly what Vincent wanted. The motorcycle wasn't designed solely around a racetrack. It was a high-performance road machine. The rider could use its enormous torque on normal roads, while still having access to serious top-end performance when conditions allowed. But there was another feature that made the Black Shadow feel like it belonged in the future. Its instruments were mounted in an unusual position, and the controls were designed with a level of thought that wasn't common among motorcycles of the era. Vincent paid attention to the rider's interaction with the machine, rather than simply assembling components and hoping everything worked together. The motorcycle also had impressive braking for its time. That mattered because Vincent understood something that many manufacturers sometimes forgot. Making a motorcycle fast is only half the problem. You also have to make it stop. The Black Shadow used large brakes and carefully developed chassis components to handle its performance. Its suspension and geometry were designed around stability, giving the rider confidence as speeds climb. And speed was central to the Black Shadow's identity. One of the most famous stories connected with Vincent involves Rolly Free, who rode a Vincent Black Shadow to a record-breaking speed at Bonneville Salt Flats in 1948. Free famously stripped down to minimal clothing to reduce aerodynamic drag and achieved a speed of 150.3313 on a modified Vincent. That wasn't a normal road motorcycle anymore, but the achievement transformed the Vincent name. Suddenly, the Black Shadow wasn't just an expensive British motorcycle. It was a machine with a proven connection to serious speed. The Bonneville record became part of the mythology surrounding Vincent, and it helped establish the company's reputation as one of the most technologically ambitious motorcycle manufacturers in Britain. By 1952, that reputation was already deeply established. The series, C Black Shadow, represented another stage in the motorcycle's development. It incorporated improvements over earlier versions, including the famous hydraulic front fork. The new fork design replaced the earlier Brampton-style arrangement and was intended to improve steering and suspension performance. It was another example of Vincent refusing to simply accept convention. The hydraulic system looked unusual, but again, the appearance wasn't the point. Vincent was searching for better control, and the engineers were willing to create something different to get there. This is what makes the Black Shadow fascinating. Almost every important part of the motorcycle tells the same story. The engine is different. The frame is different. The suspension is different. The controls are different. Even the way the motorcycle looks is different. And yet all of those unusual decisions point toward the same goal: performance. There is a temptation to look at a vintage motorcycle and assume that everything about it was primitive compared with modern machines. The Black Shadow destroys that assumption. It didn't have electronic fuel injection. It didn't have computer-controlled suspension. It didn't have disc brakes or traction control. But engineering sophistication isn't always about electronics. Sometimes it is about finding a clever mechanical solution. Vincent was extremely good at that. The company's engineers understood that a motorcycle's weight, structure, suspension, engine, and braking system couldn't be treated independently. They had to function as one machine. The Black Shadow's engine-as-a-frame-member approach is perhaps the clearest example. Rather than adding a conventional frame around a powerful engine, Vincent made the engine part of the structure. That helped reduce unnecessary weight and gave the motorcycle a compact layout. But it also meant the engine became an even more important part of the motorcycle's identity. The rider wasn't simply sitting on top of a frame with an engine attached. The rider was sitting on a machine built around the engine. That created a feeling of mechanical unity that became one of the Vincent's defining characteristics. And then there was the sound. A large Vincent V-twin doesn't sound like a modern motorcycle. It has a slower, deeper rhythm. Every combustion event seems to have physical weight. The engine doesn't need to scream to make itself heard. It announces itself. For anyone who has experienced one in person, the sound is part of the motorcycle's identity. But the Black Shadow wasn't created simply to sound impressive. The performance was real. The engine produced roughly 55 horsepower in its standard form, depending on specification, and the motorcycle could approach or exceed 125 mph under suitable conditions. Those numbers placed it among the fastest road motorcycles in the world. Think about what that meant in 1952. Highway systems were nothing like today's. Protective riding equipment was basic. Tires were narrow. Suspension technology was limited. And there was no electronic assistance. A rider approaching 120 miles per hour on a Black Shadow was experiencing something genuinely extreme. The machine demanded respect. The Black Shadow's riding position also reflected its era. It wasn't designed around the compact, aggressive ergonomics of a modern sport bike. The rider sat relatively upright, with a view over the motorcycle's long fuel tank and exposed mechanical components. That made high speed feel even more dramatic. There was nothing hiding the rider from the wind. No large aerodynamic fairing. No modern windscreen. Just the rider, the motorcycle, and the road. At 60 miles per hour, it could feel fast. At 100, it must have felt enormous. And near the motorcycle's maximum speed, the experience would have been almost overwhelming. But the Black Shadow's real significance isn't simply that it was fast. It changed expectations. Before motorcycles like the Vincent, the idea of a production road motorcycle being capable of racing-level performance was difficult to imagine. Vincent made it real. The company effectively blurred the boundary between road motorcycle and competition machine. That philosophy would later become common. Modern superbikes are designed around exactly this concept. Take racing technology and create a road-legal version. But Vincent was doing something remarkably similar decades earlier. The difference was that Vincent was doing it with a tiny production operation and mechanical technology from the middle of the 20th century. That makes the achievement even more impressive. Of course, the Black Shadow wasn't perfect. A motorcycle with this much performance came with compromises. It was expensive, mechanically demanding, and far from the kind of machine an ordinary commuter would casually purchase. Vincent production numbers were tiny compared with the major British manufacturers. That limited availability became part of the motorcycle's mystique. You didn't see Black Shadows everywhere. They were special. They were expensive. And they were built by a company whose priorities were very different from mass-market manufacturers. That exclusivity helped turn the motorcycle into an icon. But it also contributed to Vincent's eventual problems. Building motorcycles to such a high engineering standard was expensive. Vincent couldn't compete with the enormous production volumes of companies like BSA and Triumph. The motorcycle industry was becoming increasingly competitive, and customers wanted more affordable machines. Vincent had created something extraordinary, but extraordinary products can be difficult to sell at scale. The company eventually ceased motorcycle production in the mid-1950s. That makes the Black Shadow even more fascinating today. Its production life was relatively short, but its influence was enormous. The motorcycle became one of those machines that enthusiasts talked about long after production ended. And perhaps the reason is simple. The Black Shadow feels like a motorcycle designed by people who didn't care very much about what everyone else was doing. They wanted to build the best motorcycle they could imagine. That attitude is visible in every detail. The engine isn't conventional. The frame isn't conventional. The suspension isn't conventional. The layout isn't conventional. Even the company's approach to manufacturing wasn't conventional. Vincent wasn't trying to win a volume war. It was trying to prove what a motorcycle could be. And in that sense, the Black Shadow succeeded. It became a benchmark. A motorcycle that other performance machines were compared with. A machine that demonstrated the potential of a large V-twin long before the configuration became associated with some of the world's most famous performance motorcycles. And its influence reached beyond Vincent. The idea that a V-twin could provide enormous torque and serious top-end speed became increasingly important in motorcycle engineering. The Black Shadow showed that 2 cylinders didn't automatically mean low performance. With the right engineering, 2 cylinders could be enough to create a genuinely terrifying machine. The motorcycle also demonstrated that high performance didn't require a huge number of parts. sometimes fewer components designed properly could produce extraordinary results. That lesson still matters. When you look at the Black Shadow today, the motorcycle doesn't seem technologically overwhelming. It doesn't have the visual complexity of a modern superbike. In fact, it can appear almost simple. But that's misleading. The simplicity is the result of clever engineering. It takes confidence to remove unnecessary structure. It takes confidence to make the engine part of the frame. It takes confidence to develop your own suspension design. And it takes enormous confidence to sell a road motorcycle capable of 125 miles per hour when most riders had never experienced anything close to that speed. Vincent had that confidence. And the Black Shadow became the ultimate expression of it. The Series C version is particularly important because it represented the motorcycle after several stages of development. By then, Vincent had refined the basic formula and was offering a machine that combined the company's accumulated knowledge into one package. The hydraulic fork was one of the most visible improvements. The chassis was mature. The V-twin had become powerful and reliable enough to establish a reputation. And the Black Shadow had already become associated with extraordinary speed. It was no longer simply an experiment. It was a statement. Vincent was saying that a production motorcycle could be beautiful, technically advanced, brutally fast, and genuinely usable at the same time. That philosophy would eventually become the foundation of the modern superbike. Today, a leader-class motorcycle making well over 150 horsepower is almost normal. In 1952, a motorcycle capable of approaching 125 miles per hour was astonishing. That difference in perspective is important. We shouldn't judge the Black Shadow by modern performance standards. We should ask what it represented when it was new. And by that standard, it was extraordinary. It wasn't just fast for a British motorcycle. It was fast for almost anything. It wasn't just an interesting V-twin. It was one of the most ambitious production motorcycle engines of its generation. And it wasn't simply another motorcycle from a small manufacturer. It was a declaration that a small company could challenge the biggest names through engineering rather than production volume. That's perhaps the most inspiring part of the Vincent story. The company didn't have unlimited resources. It didn't have factories producing hundreds of thousands of motorcycles. It didn't have the financial power of the biggest manufacturers. What it had was imagination. And the willingness to turn that imagination into metal. The Black Shadow became the result. Today, surviving examples are highly prized, but their value isn't simply financial. Collectors aren't paying attention to the motorcycle because it's old. They're interested because it represents a turning point. It belongs to the generation that helped create the idea of the superbike. It proved that road motorcycles could be genuinely extreme. It showed that a V-twin could deliver world-class performance. And it demonstrated that clever engineering could compensate for limited production resources. That is why the 1952 Vincent Black Shadow Series C still matters. It was not perfect. It wasn't practical for everyone. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't easy. But it was bold. And motorcycles that are bold tend to survive in history. The Black Shadow changed the way enthusiasts thought about performance motorcycles because it blurred the line between what you could race and what you could actually ride on the road. It took the spirit of competition and put it into the hands of ordinary customers. That idea would eventually become normal. But Vincent was doing it when the concept was still radical. And that is the real legacy of the Black Shadow. Not simply the 125 mpapf reputation. Not simply the massive V-twin. Not simply the unusual frame or the famous suspension. It was the idea behind all of those things. Build something extraordinary. Don't accept convention just because convention is familiar. And if the existing motorcycle doesn't do what you want, redesign the motorcycle. That philosophy produced one of Britain's most remarkable motorcycles. The Vincent Black Shadow Series C wasn't just another classic. It was a glimpse into the future, created decades before the future arrived. And that is why, even after all these years, the Black Shadow still feels different. It doesn't feel like a motorcycle that belongs entirely to 1952. It feels like a motorcycle from an engineer's imagination that somehow escaped into the real world. A 998cc V-twin I. A radical chassis. A remarkable suspension system. Superbike-level performance. And a name that became synonymous with speed. The Vincent Black Shadow didn't simply participate in motorcycle history. It helped redefine what a road motorcycle could be. And that is why its shadow is still impossible to ignore.